Disclaimer, this story is based on true events, with some details changed for privacy and storytelling purposes. It is meant to inspire, entertain, and reflect on the kindness we often overlook in everyday life. It was just another ordinary morning at a cozy little coffee shop tucked on the corner of a busy city block. People rushed in and out, some on their way to work, others catching a moment of peace before the day kicked off. The line was long, and the aroma of fresh coffee beans filled the air, mixing with soft background music and the low hum of conversation. But no one in that shop expected the small act of kindness that was about to unfold or how it would change everything. He stood a few people behind her in line. A regular guy. Hoodie, jeans, scuffed-up sneakers. Not the kind of man anyone would pick out of a crowd. But he noticed her. A beautiful black woman dressed sharp and business casual with a calm confidence about her. She didn't look out of place, just another customer craving caffeine before a long day. Still, there was something about her that made her stand out. Maybe it was the way she carried herself. Maybe it was the energy around her. Or maybe it was just fate. As she got to the front of the line and placed her order, she reached for her card like anyone would. But what happened next caught everyone off guard. The barista swiped once, twice. Then came the words no one wants to hear, "Your card's been declined." There was a brief pause. The kind of silence that feels heavier than it should. She seemed stunned. Maybe embarrassed. She checked her phone, tried another card. Same result. Now, people behind her began shifting uncomfortably. Some glanced away, pretending not to notice. A few rolled their eyes, annoyed at the delay. And that's when he stepped forward. "Hey, I've got it," he said casually, like it was no big deal. He walked up to the register, handed over his card, and smiled. "Just put it on mine." She turned to him, eyes wide with surprise. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he shrugged. "But I want to." The moment passed quickly. The barista nodded, the coffee was made, and she thanked him politely but with a look he couldn't quite read. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something else. Something deeper. Something she wasn't ready to say out loud yet. They went their separate ways. Or so it seemed. He didn't think much about it afterward. It was just a coffee after all. A few bucks. He'd done his good deed for the day and figured that was the end of it. But it wasn't. What he didn't know, what nobody in that coffee shop knew, was who she really was. The woman whose card had mysteriously failed. The same woman who just walked out with a free latte thanks to a stranger. She wasn't just another customer. She was a millionaire. More than that, she was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. A self-made success, praised in Forbes and followed by thousands on LinkedIn. A boss. A visionary. A powerhouse. And yet, that morning, she let someone else pay for her coffee without revealing a word about who she was. Why? Was it just a coincidence? A glitch in her card system? Or was it something else entirely? And what happened next would take the man by complete surprise. Because within just a few days, his life would be flipped upside down in ways he never imagined. That one cup of coffee, that single moment of kindness, was about to open a door to something far bigger than he ever expected. But before that, she had a plan. Because sometimes the richest people in the room are the quietest. Sometimes the most powerful are also the most humble. And sometimes they're just waiting for the right moment to show their hand. She hadn't forgotten him. In fact, she'd already found out who he was. What she did next? Let's just say it wasn't just about repaying a coffee. Stay tuned. He went back to his usual routine after that day. Work, home, sleep, repeat. The coffee shop moment stayed with him a little, but not in a big way. He was just raised that way. If someone needs help and you can do something about it, you do. No big speech. No spotlight. Just decency. He didn't post about it online, didn't tell his friends. For him, it was just a human thing to do. But for her, it was something else entirely. Her name was Jordan. Jordan Ellis. And if you Googled her, you'd be hit with articles, interviews, photos from award ceremonies. She had grown up with nothing. Raised by a single mom in a small town, working part-time jobs while studying computer science. Years of struggle, sacrifice, and smart risks had turned her into a respected CEO. Her company had recently hit a major milestone, landing a multi-million-dollar contract with a Fortune 500 company. Her net worth had crossed the $1 million mark just a month before. But none of that was obvious that morning in the coffee shop. She was dressed simple. No designer bags, no flashy jewelry, no assistant at her side. Just her, trying to stay grounded in a world that often tried to put people like her in a box. So when her card was declined that morning, something strange happened. It wasn't just a technical issue, though. It turned out her bank had flagged the card for suspicious activity, probably because she was using a different device to make the payment. But the real thing that stayed with her was the way people around her reacted. The discomfort. The silent judgment. The way eyes slid away like she'd suddenly become invisible. Except for him. She never forgot his face. He hadn't hesitated. He didn't look at her like she was a problem. He looked at her like a person. That stuck with her. More than she expected. And the moment haunted her in the best way. She found out his name easily. His card had flashed it briefly when he paid. Not that she was spying. But she was curious. Just a name, a quick search, and she found him. His name was Marcus. Early 30s. Worked 2 jobs. Lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city. No fancy titles. No wealth. Just a hard-working man trying to make ends meet. She dug a little deeper. Not in a creepy way, just enough to understand the full picture. He volunteered at a youth center twice a month. Helped his mom cover her medical bills. He'd once crowdfunded a stranger's rent on Twitter. The more she learned, the more she realized. He wasn't just a nice guy. He was the real deal. So she made a decision. She wasn't going to show up with a giant check or flash a camera in his face. That wasn't her style. She wanted to do something that actually meant something to him. But first, she needed to see how he lived, what mattered to him. She started visiting places he went, quietly. The bookstore he liked. The park where he sometimes jogged. Not stalking, just observing. Trying to understand the man behind the kindness. Meanwhile, Marcus started getting weird signs that something was off. He got a random call about a business networking event he never signed up for. A local journalist emailed him asking for an interview about community kindness. A man in a suit approached him at a gas station and handed him a card saying someone recommended him for a job lead without saying who. It didn't make sense. He started wondering if someone had been watching him. But why? He remembered the coffee shop moment and brushed it off at first. Surely that one thing didn't have anything to do with what was happening now. But the feeling grew. Like someone was quietly shifting things in his life, piece by piece. In the background. Hidden. And they were. Jordan had a plan. Not out of guilt, but out of gratitude. Because Marcus reminded her that not all kindness is performative. Some people are still good just because it's right. And she believed that kind of spirit deserved to be lifted, not just thanked. But she wasn't ready to reveal herself just yet. Not until she knew what kind of difference she could make in his life that would really last. Something that wouldn't feel like charity, but like a door opening. What she didn't know, though, was that Marcus had secrets too. Not dark secrets, but things he carried quietly, dreams he never chased because life kept getting in the way. Things he buried under bills and responsibilities. And without knowing it, Jordan was walking right into the middle of a much bigger story. Because helping someone isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about showing up at the exact moment when they've started to give up hope. And Marcus was closer to that edge than he let anyone see. What happened next? You won't believe it. Marcus was starting to feel like something was shifting around him, like invisible hands were moving pieces on a board he didn't even know he was on. At first, he thought it was just coincidence. The unexpected job lead, the email from a local startup offering freelance work, a free invitation to a tech mixer downtown, none of it made sense. He wasn't even in tech. He was just a guy juggling 2 jobs, day shifts at a warehouse, night shifts doing deliveries. He didn't have the time, let alone the connections, to be rubbing shoulders with executives and entrepreneurs. But something inside him told him not to ignore it. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe he was just tired of barely getting by. He'd been carrying so much on his back, rent overdue, his mom's prescriptions eating up half his paycheck, a younger sister in college who didn't know how tight things really were. For years, he put everyone else first and left his own dreams to gather dust. Like the nonprofit he once wanted to start to help young men find direction after high school. Like the app he began sketching on napkins, ideas he shelved because life didn't give him room to breathe. And now, out of nowhere, these doors were cracking open. Not fully, not yet, but just enough to peek through. The tech mixer? He went. He didn't say much, just listened, tried to take it all in. But someone there already seemed to know his name. A woman at the sign-in desk gave him a folder with his resume already printed like he'd registered weeks ago. He hadn't. Still, he didn't question it. What he didn't know was that Jordan was there too. Not in the spotlight. She kept to the edges of the room, watching from a distance. She'd arranged the whole thing quietly, using her network to test how Marcus handled himself in unfamiliar territory. And he didn't disappoint. He was respectful, alert, thoughtful. When he spoke, it was clear he had ideas even if he wasn't sure how to say them yet. Jordan knew then this wasn't just a good man. He was a man with potential if only someone would give him the space to grow. But while Jordan was mapping out ways to lift him up, something else was happening that she didn't see coming. Someone else had noticed Marcus too. An investor who'd been at the mixer took an interest. Not because of Jordan's quiet nudge, but because he saw something in Marcus' raw grit. He didn't know the whole story, but he saw how Marcus listened more than he talked, how he asked real questions, not just the kind that made you look smart. This investor started asking around, digging into Marcus's background. And the more he found, the more intrigued he became. But not everyone was rooting for Marcus. At one of his jobs, a coworker noticed the shift. The sudden phone calls, the way Marcus started checking his email during breaks. Jealousy crept in. It started small, side comments, little jabs, but Marcus felt the energy change. And at home, his mom, while proud, was confused. She didn't understand why he was spending so much time dreaming when bills were still due. She didn't know the full story, and he wasn't ready to tell her yet. Meanwhile, Jordan was dealing with pressure of her own. Her board was restless. Investors wanted results. Her assistant started asking questions about the extra time she'd been spending off-grid. Even in her world where she was at the top, she wasn't completely free. Helping Marcus wasn't a business move. It was personal. And not everyone would understand that. The weight of what she was trying to do was growing. Quietly pulling strings in someone's life without their knowledge is risky. What if he found out and felt betrayed? What if she was crossing a line? Still, something told her to keep going. Because Marcus was at a crossroads and the next few steps could change everything. For better or worse. And as their paths slowly drew closer, neither of them realized that another storm was coming. One that would test not just their choices, but their character. What's waiting around the corner for Marcus? You're not ready for it. The rain hit hard that night, cold and fast, drenching the streets as Marcus stood outside his apartment building with a folder clutched tight under his jacket. Inside that folder were papers that could change everything, a business proposal he'd worked on for 2 weeks straight. No sleep, just coffee and determination. It wasn't perfect, but it was his shot. Someone from the tech mixer had reached out again, this time asking him to pitch his idea, an app aimed at helping underprivileged youth connect with mentors and job training. They wanted to hear more. They gave him a date, a time, a place. But now, just hours before the meeting, everything seemed to be falling apart. His phone buzzed nonstop. His manager from the warehouse had just cut his hours. Budget issues, they said. Then came the call from his mom. Her insurance had denied the claim for her new meds. She didn't want him to worry, but she didn't know how they'd pay for it. And on top of that, his landlord left a warning on his door, a final notice. Rent was late. Again. Marcus leaned against the brick wall, the weight of everything pressing down on his shoulders. This opportunity, this strange, unexpected chance, felt like it was slipping through his fingers before it even began. The kind of pressure that breaks a person was creeping in, and he didn't know if he had anything left to fight it. Meanwhile, Jordan was racing against time on her own side of the city. She'd spent the past few days finalizing something big, a partnership deal that could fund Marcus's project anonymously through her foundation. Everything was lined up. The paperwork, the silent donation, even a path for Marcus to take full ownership of the idea. She'd planned to stay invisible, to watch from afar. But something had changed. She felt it deep down. This wasn't just about lifting someone up. This was personal now. She wanted to be there. But just as she prepared to show up at his pitch, a crisis erupted at her company. A massive security flaw had been exposed by a competitor. Her team was calling it a PR nightmare. Investors were threatening to pull out. News articles were already circulating. She was being dragged back into the spotlight and away from the one moment she didn't want to miss. 2 lives. 2 storms. Both heading toward a decision that would change everything. And as the sun rose the next morning, neither Jordan nor Marcus could see what waited for them on the other side of that door. But it was coming. Fast. Marcus arrived at the building where the pitch was supposed to take place, still damp from the storm the night before, nerves tight in his chest. He checked the time 10 minutes early. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. But when he reached the front desk, the woman there gave him a puzzled look. "I'm sorry," she said, flipping through papers. "There's no Marcus Bennett on the list." His heart dropped. He explained, showed the email, even pulled up the address. But she just shook her head. "That meeting was canceled this morning." Confused and panicked, Marcus stepped outside and checked his phone. A new email had just come in 10 minutes ago from the same contact. Apologies, the meeting is postponed until further notice. We'll be in touch. He stared at the screen, breath caught. Something felt off. Why cancel last minute? Why now? What he didn't know was that the investor who'd taken an interest in him, James Hartwell, had gotten wind of Jordan's involvement. And he didn't like it. James and Jordan had history, the kind built on burned bridges and old rivalries. When he realized she'd been helping Marcus behind the scenes, he pulled the plug. It wasn't about Marcus anymore, it was about control. At the same time, Jordan sat in a tense boardroom meeting, her phone buzzing in her lap. She glanced down and saw the notification, meeting with Marcus canceled by Hartwell's team. Her stomach dropped. She stood up mid-sentence and walked out, leaving a room full of shocked executives behind. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about lifting Marcus up, it was about protecting him from the people who saw his potential as something to manipulate. But it might already be too late. Because someone else was watching all this unfold. Someone Jordan didn't even know was in the game. And their next move would change everything. Marcus was halfway down the block, shoulders heavy when a car pulled up beside him. The tinted window rolled down. It was Jordan. For the first time, face to face. "I'm the reason you were in that room," she said. "And the reason they shut the door on you." Marcus blinked, stunned. She explained everything, how she had watched quietly after the coffee shop, how she had believed in him more than anyone ever had, and how James Hartwell, an old rival, had found out and sabotaged the meeting out of spite. He didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. His pride was bruised, but deep down, he felt something stronger, validation. Someone had seen him, believed in him. And not just anyone, a millionaire CEO. Jordan handed him a second envelope. "I had a backup plan in case they pulled this." Inside is seed funding. No strings. "If you still want to build your app, now's the time." Marcus opened it slowly. It wasn't a loan. It was an investment. From her. Under his name. But just as it felt like everything was finally lining up, Jordan's phone rang. She stared at the screen, frozen. Her company had been bought out. Hartwell again. A hostile takeover. She was being pushed out of her own empire. Marcus looked at her, this woman who changed his life, and saw something familiar. The same weight he carried now on her. "You believed in me," he said quietly. "Now let me return the favor." And right there, the twist, Marcus refused the money. Instead, he offered Jordan a deal. Let him invest in her with the very app he was about to build. A fresh start, together. Two strangers. One story. And that simple coffee shop moment? It turned into something no one saw coming. The weeks that followed moved fast. Marcus used what little savings he had to register his business, and Jordan helped quietly from the sidelines. No boardrooms, no titles, just guidance. The app launched in beta, and within months it was being used in after-school programs across the city. Mentors signed up. Students found jobs. A small idea became a movement. Jordan, though no longer CEO of her company, didn't disappear. She'd lost the business, but not her voice. She became a powerful speaker and advisor, using her story to inspire others, reminding people that success isn't just about holding power, it's about knowing when to lift someone else up. Marcus was no longer the man working double shifts in silence. He became a local leader, showing what could happen when someone from a working-class background was given a real shot. People started to see him differently, but he never changed who he was. And every now and then they'd meet at the same coffee shop. No headlines, no fanfare. Just two people who'd crossed paths by chance, one who gave when he had little and the other who gave when she had much more. That one moment when a man paid for a black woman's coffee after her card was declined turned out to be the start of everything. Not because of money or status, but because kindness still matters. Because people are more than what they look like on the surface. And sometimes the smallest gestures lead to the biggest stories.